Welcome to an episode of the award-winning podcast Art Insiders New York. My name is Anders Holst. The theme of the podcast is New York, with a focus on behind-the-scenes conversations with fascinating people who are making an impact in the world of art, design, and architecture. Richard Saul Wurman, the founder of the TED Conference, is one of the most influential American architects and graphic designers of our time. Early in his career, he coined the term information architecture and has written, designed, and published 90 books on divergent topics identified by his singular passion of his life, that of making information understandable both for himself and others. His book, Notebooks and Drawings by Louis Kahn, is being reissued in honor of the influential American architect's 120th birthday this year. The Rochester Institute of Technology has announced the launch of the Wurman Center for Understanding, where one can learn how to explain anything and everything.
So, Richard, I'm honored to have you on. Great admirer of your work through the years, of course, and we met the first time at the TED Conference in 90, and that was an event that, of course, made a great impression on me. I was a consultant at the time, and I had two clients with me from.
I've never had a PR person. I've never advertised anything. I don't promote anything I've ever done. I've done about 90 books. I don't send them for reviews. I don't sell them to bookstores. I don't have a publisher. I just virally, my whole life is viral.
Well, I remember that when I went to that TED conference, it was like a smorgasbord of everything. And it was
just all my muses. I get no input from the audience. I don't ask for input. I have no board of directors.
Yeah.
I don't take advice.
Yeah.
I do the thing. The only advice I take is my own. And everything I do is based on what I'm interested in. I've just finished in this last year. I did my first, about a year, right at the beginning of COVID, I did my first piece of sculpture ever in my life. I'd never been trained in sculpture, and I've never did a sculpture. I used to paint. Now, I had painted before then, but when COVID came, I ran out of frames. And I either throw them away or frame them. That's what I do, because I do watercolors on the rice paper, so they're easy to throw away anyway. So I'd done a series of watercolors. I don't have an agent. I've never shown my things in a gallery. I've never sold any things, and I don't even give them away to my kids. So all my paintings is a totally private thing. I'm an old Jew who paints as a hobby. And so I started doing sculpture, and the first one came out okay. So I did, it turned out okay. So I thought, well, I'll get it cast in bronze to celebrate that I did a sculpture. Since then, I've done 18 sculptures. They're all cast in bronze this year. And by accident, just before the COVID, this guy had his main bookstore in Coral Gables. He has 8 bookstores. And he looked at the paintings and he really liked them. And he said, who did them? And when I told him, I had to convince him I did them because he really liked them and he didn't think I painted, of course. I didn't advertise. I don't tell anybody that I paint. Yeah. I mean, it's just like telling somebody you pee. Which, of course, I probably tell people that more than I tell them I paint. And I convinced them that I really did them. He said, well, he just loves them. He would love, something should happen with these. I said, nah, I'm fine. Yeah. I'm not looking for things to do. So about 2 months later, I got a call from next door to his main store is in the old fire and police department of Coral Gables, an older building and very nice up. And that's his main store, Books and Books. And immediately next door is a bigger building, and it was the old city hall. So they had a complex. And the old city hall has been turned into a local museum. They don't have a collection. They have shows every once in a while. Not a fancy museum, but it's a very wealthy town. So it's one of those things. Like there's a museum in East Hampton because it's a wealthy area. They have their own museum, but it's not a great museum. It's just has some interesting shows because they're a wealthy town. You know what I mean? Yeah. So 2 months later, the head curator, she must have had her arm twisted. I wouldn't have come to see me because I am, as I described, an old rich Jew with a beard, doing amateur painting, on the beach. Anyway, she came and she fell in love with them too. So I said, well, that's fine. She said, could we have a show of your paintings? I said, I guess so. I never thought about that. We have a date in this August, September, and October for a show of my paintings. But in the meantime, I've done 18 sculptures, which I like doing better than the paintings. So the show is going to be my 18 sculptures and 35 paintings. And the whole museum is just going to be me for 3 months.
Wow.
So that's a completely new thing that happened, I guess, because of COVID.
Wow.
Somewhat. I wouldn't have had all the time to do the sculpture. And I really enjoy doing the sculpture.
That's incredible. So you can add that now to your various occupations that you've had through life, because I found this very interesting. Your wife explained in one interview that it's very hard to explain what Richard does. It is especially hard for Richard to explain what Richard does. And then you said that you had 5 lives. You were trained in architecture. You've had a life in archaeology, writing guidebooks, medical books, running conferences, and a life in information theory. So now you can
one more. I have one more. A serious archaeology. No, seriously. Have you ever heard of? I don't know. You might not, being from Sweden, maybe you don't know anything about the Mayans.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, the largest and the oldest of the Mayan cities, is Tikal.
Yeah.
Tikal, and that was complete jungle, but they knew it was there. And in 1958. The University of Pennsylvania Archaeological Museum and the Guatemalan government, the Museum Archaeologica in Guatemala City, had their first year decided to have an expedition and basically cut down the jungle and try to discover what was there in the edges of the city. And I went there, and I was 21, and I'm 86 now, so it's a long time ago.
Well, you certainly don't look it.
And I mapped 1/3 of Tikal.
Wow.
In the jungle with 2, there was 3 of us mapping, and we each mapped a third.
That's incredible. So now you can add an artist to all of that through your painting.
I painted when I was in the university a little bit. I didn't take, I was in architecture, not painting. So I painted watercolors for the 3 of the years I was at University of Pennsylvania. And they had an annual show, and I won first prize in watercolor every year. So I knew I could paint. And but then I didn't paint for 60 years. I stopped as soon as I graduated, and I've had other things to do. So that was sequential. But when I did guidebooks and information theory and ran conferences, I ran conferences.
Yeah.
And did architecture. I had an architectural practice and a graphic design practice and a medical conference, and did a whole series of books on medicine and a whole series, the best-selling book ever on the Olympics, on sports and things of that sort. They were all done at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to mention to our listeners, though,
they're all the same thing. And the reason I started telling the story was because of something you said, which I now remember. As soon as I finish a painting, I no longer identify that I did it. I observe it then. And when I'm finished anything I do, I observe it probably a teeny bit different than somebody else, because I know intellectually I created it, but I don't feel it. I don't have the feeling of authorship.
Huh.
I intellectually know I authored it. And that's the same with a book. That I don't feel the pride of authorship. I don't think about them as mine, or my paintings, or my sculpture. I look at them like I'm seeing them as somebody who came to visit.
Many artists look at their artwork as their kids. I mean, they are extremely involved with it. But with you, it's you do it, and then you.
I don't give a fuck.
You distance yourself. But so you said that you don't do promotion, but I would like to do some promotion for you, because now you're re-releasing the notebooks and drawings by Louis Kahn.
I am not. But I do not reprint my books.
Okay.
A person who I did not know by the name of Steve Croder called me about a year ago, and he said that this book of mine he had seen, and he thought it was extraordinary. And he knows it's been out of print for 50 some years. And what he does, he's a graphic designer, but he doesn't do graphic design. What he does for a living is he finds books that he thinks are terrific, sort of cult books, icon. And he reproduces, he does a Kickstarter, and he does them in facsimile. He said, could I do that with your book? And I told him, no. I have no desire. I have a copy of the book. I don't need another copy.
Yeah.
And I don't give a shit if anybody else has another copy. And I'm not in the book business. I'm in my next idea business. Yeah. All I care about is coming up with the next idea. I don't have, as I said, nobody's asked me to do nobody's ever asked me to do a conference or a book or be on their board or anything. I'm a reclusive person.
Yeah.
Not on stage. I'm very comfortable on stage, but reclusive when I'm home. And so he says, well, he always has a reader's guide, a small reader's guide that he puts with the book.
Okay.
So I said, I don't think so. And then he called me back. He said, I wondered if you'd change your mind. I said, I'll change my mind on the following thing. It's your project. I will give you everything I have on Lou, and I have a lot of stuff on Lou that you don't know about. I'd already given 100 of his drawings to the archives at Penn. I have right here, I have five of his drawings there. And I have maybe 10 pages out of his notebooks where he wrote that I held back. I didn't give to Penn. They'll get them when I die, I guess.
Okay.
And so I like looking at one very important drawing of his. And I'll give you all my help, and I'll put you in touch with people you can call, and I'll give you advice. If you want to take it, if you don't want to take it, it's fine, because you're going to do a facsimile, so I have nothing to say about that. But if you make the reader's guide as big as the book, and the book is oversized, and thick on cheap paper, and you have in it lots of stuff that nobody will ever publish in another book, stuff that is not photos of his buildings, not finished drawings, but his process, and comments of his children, and comments by me, and comments by Moshe Zafti and other people. If you have comments in there, and you have stuff, and you go to the archives and get scraps that were saved in the archives of yellow trash, the way architects draw on that yellow trash tracing paper, that nobody else in their books, and there's lots of really wonderful books on Kahn. I mean, there's a really library now of fine books on his projects, and whole books on different projects.
Yeah.
Kimball and the British Museum and Salk and Dhaka. There's whole books on beautiful books. I don't want to do another. I don't want to have it beautiful. I just want to have it the stuff that shows how he thought. If you do that and not try to make it beautiful, and do it the same size, but not with hardcover, not with a linen cover, not gold stamped the way the other one is. It really is just a companion piece. It's more like a telephone book.
Yeah.
And so he said, okay. So I said, then, okay. And that's what's coming out.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. So you said about Louis Kahn that he will, something to this fact that he will live with you forever. What did you mean by that?
Well, you have people in your mind that you think about, and you have moments in your life that have, not everybody does. Yeah. I take that back. Some people, I'll just go back to the beginning. Some people have mentors.
Yeah.
Or some people have people they think that have changed their life. I mean, it's very wonderful from the stage that people say, I owe everything to my mother who was this great. But I'm not talking about that kind of shit. Talking about somebody who you might have liked, you might not have liked. But somehow there's something about the way they thought or their values or something that added the kind of angels of clarity to your life.
Yeah.
Some of us are lucky to have had.
Yes.
I am such a person, and I'm lucky to have had Lou. Now, the interesting thing about Lou is that many, not just me, many of the people in the University of Pennsylvania, and University at Yale, Princeton, students, other architects who didn't work for him or with him, but knew him, people who have met him and talked with him, they feel the same way. There was something about him. There was magic. He wasn't a good speaker. He wasn't that nice a person. He was jealous of everybody getting work and he didn't get any. He didn't have very many skill sets. Social, he had skill sets. He wasn't socialized. He wasn't charming in that way.
Yeah.
He had a magnetism, and he told naturally, not by saying, to be perfectly honest or to be frank. Those are all throwaway phrases. It means that everything else you said wasn't.
Exactly.
Without trying to impress you, he always spoke his truth. Some of it, nobody understood. So he had this, if you describe him, it sounds like one of these woo-woo guru guys living naked up in the Himalayas. And he had an aspect of magnetism, and he was short, he had a shrill voice, and terribly scarred. He was not an attractive person. But there was something that made him different than anybody else I had ever met. His conscience and his permission for me to be more of me, not to do things in his style or copy him, but his permission to me personally changed my life. Now, I was more fortunate than others because we became really good. We became friends, or I think, had a love. We loved each other in some way.
Yeah.
I couldn't talk about it, nor could he, because of the jealousies in the office. Everybody wanted a piece of Lou. Yes. They all wanted a time. But he and I secretly went to football games and baseball games. And then he planned my life. At one point, I worked for him for 3 years. It's only things like this I'm finding out now because somebody's doing my biography. A major biography.
Wow.
It's an 800-page biography. And in doing that, he's researching. He's a real academic. He has several master's degrees and research degrees.
Yeah.
I found out by putting things together, some of it between his children, like his Nathaniel, who did that wonderful film on him, my architect, said that my little book, which was the first book I ever did, and the first book ever done on Lou, was Lou's favorite book.
Wow.
And the last thing he bought before he died, on his way to the airport to go to India, take that trip and come home and die in Penn Station in New York, was 2 copies of that book to give to people.
Wow.
And that book had been out for 20 years then, or 10 years then. That he allowed me to do the book in the first place, and that I picked out the drawings myself. And he says, "What are you picking out drawings in my book for?" Who said to me, I said, "Well, that's the whole idea." But he said, "Well," then he got it, and he sat back. He said, "Well, I'll be very interested to see which drawings you pick out." He took it as a learning thing for himself, right?
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to see what Ricky picks out. It would be different than what I would pick out, but it's interesting in itself.
Wow.
It was that kind of acceptance of learning, of finding patterns. I worked for him for 3 years. He says, "You should teach now." I started work for him 3 years before that on a Friday. He sent me I was 23. He sent me to London to do an impossible project after I'd worked for him for 2 days.
Yeah.
And knew nothing about what I was going over there for or how to do it. And I was there 6 months. He set me up to put me in sort of impossible conditions, which helped me. And then I put myself in impossible positions, of survival positions, in a period of my time, of my life between 18 and 23 or 4. And those 5 years changed me from mentally slightly soft and having gotten up to that point without starving in the streets or doing things, that I felt I would survive. So, and half of those things he put together and half of them I put together. One thing I did after my freshman year had nothing to do with Lou. a friend of mine, begged our way across the United States and back in 2 months. We'd be killed now, but we did it then. We begged all our food and got from coast to coast.
Was that when you met Ray Eames?
Yeah. How do you know I met Ray Eames?
I do my homework. I'm like you.
Wait, where did you find that? I didn't think that was written anywhere.
No, but I find interviews with you, and I found that story very endearing.
It was very endearing, and then I worked with Eames after that, and we used to kid about that. Ray and I, we just laughed at that, how smelly and how funny we were coming up to her place. But at that time, she just was invited us in. Now you would call the cops.
I know. I was thinking about that. She said, "Why don't you come in for a bath?"
That's a different time.
Yeah, well, come in for a bath.
Yeah, she wanted me to have a bath. Now, I get an inordinate amount of publicity without trying at all.
Yeah. You even get free baths and food. She fed you.
I get food and baths everywhere.
Well, you're best that way, Richard. You don't really need anything, right?
I don't need anything. People give me things.
But then you worked with Charles Eames, right?
Yes.
How was that? I mean,
I worked for Charles Eames. You don't work sort of with people when they're that special. The only two people that I worked for who didn't fire me were Lou and Charlie. Charlie called me Saul. He used my middle name.
What does Saul mean?
It's in Hebrew. It's Shlomo. So my name is actually Reuben Shlomo Wurman. My grandparents on my mother's side were kosher butchers, quite poor, but since they were kosher butchers, they were quite immersed in Judaism. And my father's side of the family were cigar makers. Basically, they both dealt in death, cutting off heads of chicken and giving cancer to people's mouth,
But you have rectified that. You have given people inspiration and life, and
I don't give a shit. No, I don't give anybody anything. No, I do. I am. Get past the first sentence because I'll explain it.
Yeah.
I am completely indulgent because I think it's the truth. I think the only thing I know, and I probably don't know that as well as one could, is myself. I don't know what you're thinking now. And you don't know what I'm thinking. And you can't possibly know what I'm thinking, and I can't possibly know what you're thinking. Now think of me as being on the stage and there's 1,000 people out there. I can't know what they're thinking. I don't ever invite a speaker when I'm giving a conference. I'm giving an example. I don't ever invite a speaker to please the audience because I don't know what they're thinking. How am I going to please them?
Yeah.
And I don't care about pleasing them anyway.
Exactly.
I care about the excuse of the conference as I get to meet some people I want to meet. Now, when I do a book, I want to make it good for myself. I want to enjoy the action since I don't have a publisher and nobody has ever asked me to do any book.
Yeah.
I choose the subjects and I do the book. So I don't care about the person reading the book or literally how many it sells because I'm not in the book business. I'm in the business of having my next idea.
Yeah. You were described in Fortune magazine as an intellectual hedonist with a hummingbird mind.
And they interviewed my wife, and one thing she said is that Richard would rather be a brain in a jar than anything else. And there's a certain truth to that.
Yeah. You said something when we spoke earlier, I think it was last week, you said something, once you've done something and you're good at it, what's the point in doing it again? It's not a matter
of being good at it. Once I do something and I figured out how to do it, even if I could make some improvements to it, why bother doing it again? That's what I know most people do. Somebody goes to a publisher because they're expert in something. And they get an advance so they can write a book about their expertise so other people can learn that expertise. But let's say person number 2 goes to a publisher and says, I don't know anything about this subject, but I'm interested in it. Would you fund it?
Yeah.
So everything I do comes from my not knowing to knowing. The world is set up of people knowing and trying to know it better and getting an audience for it. I'm trying to learn something and then go on to the next thing. Yeah. It's a totally different journey.
Yeah.
My value is my ignorance. My expertise is my ignorance. I know more about my ignorance than you know about yours. And that acceptance of my ignorance makes me more powerful than you. Because I'm always seeking, I don't understand anything.
No. And that is basically your life's journey, that you want to make things understandable, right?
And yes, and the miracle is that I've survived.
Yeah.
And survived well. I mean, I'm okay. I have enough.
Yeah. So one thing that I really like about you, Richard, is that you love to put people together and mix sort of choreograph an exchange of ideas between people. And we have to talk about the TED conference because people who listens to this they want to know about the TED conference. So how did that come about?
TED conference, the way it is now, is completely different than the way it was. Okay, it's just different. So let's talk about TED 1, TED 2. I'll talk about the first 18 years and the creation.
Yeah.
Then from now on in, it's a different story. It's not bad, it's just different. And so I can't speak for it. It's not that I was right and they're wrong. It's just that I did it one way and they call it the same thing and paid me for it, but they do it a different way. So it's not a criticism. It's just a difference, all right? In trying to be not haiku, but minimalistic, I like to reduce things as much as I can to see if I can find an essence. The essence of TED, for me, again, indulgent me, the essence for TED was observing and activating nouns, Nouns, kissing.
What?
That's it. Nouns, kissing.
Yeah.
Different subjects.
Yeah.
Nouns.
Yeah.
Talking to each other and kissing.
Yeah.
And seeing what happens in the pattern making as there is a convergence between different points of view, different subject matter, different people. So they kiss. And sometimes the patterns that come out of that kiss form a whole new pattern and something new and an embrace and sometimes an antithesis, and they see the differences. Not unlike, I don't know if you've ever heard of a man by the name of Carlos Gardel.
No.
Carlos Gardel died in 1935 in an accident in Chile on an airfield in a small plane. Another person he didn't like was in a small plane on that airfield, and they played chicken with each other, not taking off, and they crashed and died. That's not the big deal about Carlos Gardel. The big reason he is the most famous person in Argentina even today, dying in 1935 and playing chicken to his death, is because he created the music and invented the dance of the tango.
Wow.
And he is venerated even more than their fried cheese there. He's venerated in Argentina because that dance is the epitome of innovation. One of the there's only 5 ways of innovating. And I have an acronym ANOSE, the O, the middle finger, right? The O. The O is the opposite. And that dance, and the opposite of things is usually a radical alternative. If you've ever had a creative idea in your life, it probably was, they call it out of the box. What it really is a radical alternative. What do comedians do? What is a punchline? A radical alternative. The opposite of expectation makes you laugh, but also is the breakthrough in many sciences, in investments, in starting companies, new products, creativity, new forms of everything comes from the opposites. Niels Bohr, the great physicist, small particle physicist, who had terrible arguments with Einstein, but they were friends, good friends, because he believed in quantum physics, and Einstein, as we know, didn't believe in quantum physics. But he said at one time that, I think during his acceptance speech for his Nobel, that when he had a profound idea, the opposite idea was also profound.
Oh.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
Now, let's look at the dance. The dance of the tango is people are violent to each other and love each other. They don't touch and they almost hit each other. Improvised, and yet they have very ordered movements. All radical alternatives you can do. Right?
Yeah.
I like Carlos Gardel, and he died in 1935, which is the year I was born. It is also the year when the Volkswagen first came out. Although the Volkswagen they've now found was copied from a Polish car. And it's also the first year that the Toyota came out. So people who were together in the Second World War, apart in the First World War, both had their people's car come out in 1935.
Wow.
And I was born.
Wow.
So
That's a beautiful story, I have to say. It's called technology entertainment and design, and I was thinking about that today. Why wasn't it technology education and design, or is it education that comes out of all of this?
You're opening up a time bomb with no fuse. It's just going to go off. Learning, catch this because this sounds glib at first, but then I'm going to test you on it. Learning is remembering what you're interested in. Now, let's pull that glib phrase apart. Do you really remember anything you weren't interested in over any long period of time?
No.
Do you remember sometimes things you didn't do so well, but you're interested in, and you keep following them and you remember them? Did you ever do so-so in a course in school, but were interested in, you remember? Did you ever do very well in a course that you weren't interested in? You forget it. Is basically everything you remember something that you are interested in rather than you memorize? So there's two words now, getting words down to simple things, nouns kissing, memory, memorize. What we do and what our educational system is and cannot be saved is the memorization of things you're not interested in, put down on a piece of paper bulimically. You throw them up on the piece of paper, forget them, and then you go on to the next test.
Yeah.
It's a system based on the test of your memory of a subject you're not particularly interested in, developed in a book and approved in one city and one group of people in Texas.
Yeah.
And that same textbook is used across the United States, and it has nothing to do with learning. So there's a board of education, it's not a board of learning. They're not interested in learning in school. They're interested in education. They're interested in memorization. They're interested in anything but the personal inquisitiveness and curiosity of the individual.
Yeah.
Teachers, not guides. They don't see the connection between everything in the world. If I was interested in cars as a 16-year-old boy often is, maybe girls are too, and I could have taken the subject cars and taken it from 16, when I was 16, 17, probably I started in 15 because I was going to be 16, get a learner's permit, 15, 16, 17, 18, all through school, all through my younger school years. I could have had one course called cars, and it would connect to physics with the right guide, to chemistry, to different countries and different languages, to roads and road systems, different forms of transportation, to why the road system, and to cities, and why the road system was different in different cities, and the different ways of movement. And why is the car wheels 5 foot 8.5 inches apart? And why is a train wheel 5 foot 8 inches apart? And why is the Roman chariot with 2 horses, the wheels 5 foot 8.5 inches apart? And I could learn about history through things like that.
Yeah.
I could learn about chemistry. I could learn about all different motors and different kinds of electric motors, and the history of the electric motor being before the history of the gasoline motor, and yet we think we just invented the electric motor for the car now. When I grew up in Philadelphia, Curtis Publishing, one of the big publishing companies, used to deliver their magazines to all the corner magazine stands by electric trucks. That was 70 years ago. You'd learn about materials. You could make all kinds of materials in car. We now accept all kinds of materials, not just steel or tin or plastic or hybrid materials, or they could be made of anything. The various designs of cars and designers of cars, the cost of cars, the economics of cars. You could take cars for the rest of your life and learn anything you wanted. The electronic systems in the cars now, the fact that you have TV sets or you have computers for sure and big screens, and how many motors there are. There's 4 or 5 batteries. I had the whole time during COVID, I had to have a trickle of electricity come into my car because there's 4 separate batteries that will run down in my one car to run all the electronics. Not just one battery. It runs up 4 different batteries. Now, take another subject. You can take any subject, and I can tell you the same story. And that's just ad hoc. That's off the top of my head. That's not something I memorized because I can't memorize anything. And I don't take notes. The educational system is bankrupt. What do people say? Oh, it would be much better if we had smaller classrooms. No, better if we had bigger classroom and teach, remotely. No. It would be better if we taught more band and more music and more sports or more of this. No, it would be better if we paid teachers more money. No, it would be better. All these reasons, not one of them has to do with learning.
That's interesting.
Paying teachers more money, does that make a better teacher? Does a bigger classroom, a smaller classroom? Where does the word learning come out?
Exactly. You're right.
You're taught by a teacher who went to a school of education, who learned things all the way down, and there's no progress along that way.
Yeah.
They're doing what they know how to do. Your teacher in any university, they teach about their expertise, not about their desire to expand or go into unknown territory. Now, Lou Kahn comes back into this because he says he will stop teaching the moment he learns less than the students. When I taught a lot, and I was dean of a school, and I taught at Penn, Princeton, Cornell, UCLA, USC, Cal Poly Pomona, Washington University, St. Louis, and Cambridge University. I never taught what I knew about. I thought of something I wanted to learn about, and I taught it along with the students. So I was enthusiastic about the process.
Yeah, because you learned something. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I was thinking about this. In 1976, you coined the term information architecture.
Information architecture and the information architect. I coined that, and I got a lot of pushback from the design community around the world, particularly in Germany and Holland. And they want to know if I was going to charge a fee for using that word. I mean, such a stupid question. When they could look at the books I had done up to then, it was probably 40, and I don't even copyright them. I came up with that term not because I was an architect, but that architect symbolically represents something that has to work and has a discipline and a set of rules, but a structure to the thinking of how to solve a problem. Information design at that time, for certainly, and even today, I have no idea what's inside my iPhone. What's inside is not expressed on the outside. In the dark, it's hard to put the charge thing in here. Nothing has to do with it working. A designer takes the stuff and tries to squeeze it in together and then makes a package around it. So I'm buying Apple's aesthetic taste of what they think are pretty packages. What they advertise when it comes out is the rounded corner and how this is set in and the colors it comes in. It's just sham. I mean, if a battery is so important, why not make an electric car out of a battery? Why isn't the whole car a battery? And you put a few cushions in the battery for sitting. Why do you build a car that looks beautiful, right? And then you have to put a battery in it. I find it such a backwards mentality of why things are. This is based on its battery. The battery should be expressed. Kahn said, anytime you're in any room, you should know how the room is made. Half of the cost of the building you're in is the mechanical equipment. HVAC costs half of the total cost of the building, and then they hide it by hanging a ceiling. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just illogical to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So I'm about trying to express what I do.
So, Richard, what is your take then in today's, let's say, society here? We have civil unrest, we had this election, and we have all this fake news and everything. And it seems to me that...
I understand the question. I'll give you the answer before you're happy. There are doctors, people who invest money, there's lawyers, there's politicians, there's situations, there's COVID, there's other diseases, there's other laws, there's taxation, there's insurance, there's reverse mortgages, there's all kinds of things in our life, right? Not one of those is explained. Now, that was a very simple sentence. The system of explanation is broken totally, and the system of explanation is not part of our learning experience. So we're all being belittled by people who have expertise that I wouldn't want to have dinner with, even if they were paying. My lawyer, I can't understand. I make a will. I don't know the initials or the acronyms of other things and trusts and why I should do this with my house or something else. My financial advisor from JP Morgan's a lovely woman. I can't understand. I tell her what I want, and she answers me back with what she sells. I can't understand doctors. They don't make anything understandable to me. You know, he just wants to pluck down pills, and he doesn't do any of the interaction with those pills with other pills, and there's nothing explained. So there's going to be a center, which you probably don't know about, which I was asked about. And I'll just get up and I'll show you something.
Okay.
Can you see that? Here's me.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the first announcement book with the president's note and the message and everything else.
Oh my goodness. It's a physical center.
Really, they're raising funds. They're going to build it, and it's going to give doctorates and master's degree in explaining.
Yeah.
It's not aimed at designers. It's aimed at somebody graduates Wharton.
So where is it going to be?
Rochester Institute of Technology.
Wow. Congratulations.
Well, I didn't give them money and I didn't ask them.
You inspired them.
It just happened. And I've only been there once in 1973. And I know it's 1973 because somebody sent me an article that was in the local Rochester paper that talks about my speech. And I was there in 1973 to give a speech. I haven't been back. I haven't been back since they've done this.
Yeah. But you see, I love what you said there in your, let me see here in my notes. You did a memorial speech for Charles Eames. And you said if there ever was, you said in remembrance piece in 1978, if there ever was a professor of curiosity or a dean of learning or president of imagination or commissioner of magic, they would all be Charles Eames. And I think...
Is that beautiful or what? Am I a good writer or not? I think that was a lovely eulogy for him. I'm telling you this because I read it because this person is doing this book and brought this to my attention. And I said, that's really lovely. But I'm saying it the same way you're saying it. I'm not bragging about it. It just so happens it was done. I happen to have done it, but I don't remember doing it. And I read it and I think, wow, I couldn't do that today.
But we need some kind of an information architect if we're going to survive, right?
We don't need anything. We desire things. The world would go on fine without me knowing how to use this.
Yeah.
The whole world would go on without these. But I find it interesting if you understand things. It's just interest. We don't have to progress. We don't have to get fancy, smaller and smaller iPhones. We don't have to have better and better cars. We don't have to have any of these things. We don't have to eat more, make more, have bigger buildings or taller buildings. We don't need those things. We desire to have them So some people do it. Some of it interests me and some of it doesn't interest me at all. Yes, it is true that the doctor and the lawyer and the Indian chief and you and investment brokers and this person do not explain anything in a way that I can understand it. But I'm here. I'll get along.
Yeah.
So I'm not a preacher.
Okay.
And it's really because I don't give a shit. I care, and I'm going to go back to something now. This is the third time I've said it. I care about my next idea.
Yeah. Apropos that, what is your next idea?
Working on it. Always have a next idea. I've done 90 books and 40 conferences. I always have a next idea.
So what is in your hummingbird mind?
I'm inventing how to do a center which is not based on a better version of anything that's been done. For instance, yesterday I had a conversation and I said they're talking about, well, we need a board of advisors and a board of directors and things like that. I said, no, you say you need that because you've always had that. Why don't we invite 50 or 60 amazing people that I know, because I know people. And let's say, here's the deal, guys. You don't have to come to any meeting. And we're not asking you for any money. We would like to list you here, and we'd like to be able to get you on the phone, and we'd like you to call each other. If you're interested in the ideas that come out about explaining things, and you're all in different fields. Some of you are business, some of you, one was head of Ford, there's business people, there's Yo-Yo Ma, there's graphic designers, there's all manner of people.
Yeah.
We'll just list you as muses, which is also part of the word amusement. How do we do a school that has no classrooms? And I say, let's just use some of the other classrooms that are in the university and use somebody's auditorium. And we get to know those schools too. But let's have at least the most amazing place, that the whole ground floor of the building that we leave open air, but we heat the seats because they have hard winters, and we have ways of cooling it, but it's outside. You walk through it because the thing is located right near the main entrance to the university. And you can sit down there by yourself or with 3 or 4 other people. And it's like a 22nd century version of the Spanish Stairs. And that conversation among people is the essence of a university and the essence of explaining things to each other. And some of our muses, when they come to town, can sit there, and some of the faculty we get can just be there, and you can have a conversation with them. Or you can go up in the building, and we have a vast archive. I have about 30 or 40 people who are going to give us all their archives, and everything is going to be off the cloud. And a kind of archive there's a school right next to where this building is going to be, which is one of it's either first or second best school of animation in the country. It's called Magic, but it's part of Rochester Institute of Technology. Mm-hmm. So you're going to learn in 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and in animation, 4 dimensions, what are the modalities for explaining things? What do you need to explain over time, which is when you need the ability to seamlessly and easy give instructions to somebody to take this information, that the right way to show it is in a short 30-second film or something. Of how to teach the graduate of Wharton how to make what he does understandable to his clients. But he doesn't have to become a designer and do it himself. He has to get it done. I just told you I don't know how to do anything. I get a lot done.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but that's very serious. I'm not good at anything. I told you I can't type. I can't read a hard book. I can't use my iPhone. Somebody set this up. I don't know how to use a computer. I don't do anything well. I don't dress well. I don't talk well. I'm not socialized, but it's been fine. But I know how to get things done. That's what the school is going to be about.
Wow.
How do you get it done?
That's very exciting.
How do you communicate with another human being? Nobody teaches you that. Has anybody ever taught you how to make a phone call?
No.
No, this is a very serious question.
Yeah.
Nobody's taught you how to do that.
Not really, no.
Do you know a lot of people are lousy on the phone? They don't get to a point where they say, how's everything going?
Yeah.
What does you just tell me what that means, and I'll take everything I said back. What does that question mean? And today it was said probably already 100 million times. What does it mean? Tell me what it means.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's sort of
another one. I'll give you another one. Keeping busy?
Yeah. I guess it doesn't really mean anything, but it's an expression of that you care about the person that you.
No, it isn't. If you cared about them, you wouldn't ask that question. That is an impersonal, personal question. It's a faux question, and therefore it's a lie.
Yeah.
Because it can't be answered.
No,
No, I'm making a big point, because if you begin a conversation that way, which people do, you don't know a fucking thing about the structure of communication or conversation or making a phone call or seeing somebody in person.
Yeah. And you probably respond with a lie too. I'm great. I'm doing very well. I'm very busy.
You're not. So what you tell back is a lie.
Exactly. So we started off by lying to each other. Yeah.
I gave a speech there's a rather nice conference called the Nantucket Project. And I had a conversation with this multi-billionaire who's brilliant. And he's one of my very best friends. And I have like 5 friends. So it's not saying it's one of my very best friends and I'm talking about 1,000 people. I'm talking about 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
I always say I have 5 and I can only think of 4. So I lied a little bit there to make it seem I could put my whole hand out. We had a conversation. It was supposed to last an hour. I wasn't watching my time. We were just sitting talking. It was unplanned. We had no subject, no agenda. We were just having a conversation in front of 300, 400 people. But we know each other and we love each other. And I just forgot about the audience. I'm just saying things to them and all. And I see they're waving the background that the hour is up. I said, they're telling me my hour is up. Thank goodness, because I really got to pee. There was a little titter, but not much, because they knew I was telling the truth.
Yeah.
I'm an old man. I got to pee.
Yes.
What I'm saying is telling the truth doesn't get you into trouble in any way or makes you seem odd. People understand that you're just telling the truth. The truth is astonishingly powerful.
Yeah.
Also why I'm on no boards and why I'm never asked to do anything. Because nobody really wants me around except one-to-one in a conversation, because it's very uncomfortable.
I think it's very comfortable, and I think it's very inspiring.
One-to-one, no. One-to-one is very comfortable.
Yeah.
If it's a board of directors or if it's a group of people, it's not so comfortable. You saw me in New York when I was on the stage, and I introduce people, and I sometimes take people off the stage because they're talking too long. And I told the truth, and everybody in the audience knew I was telling the truth up there. When something was good, I said it was really good.
I know that, and I've also read in your interviews here that you are a truth teller, and you don't mess around. But can I ask you one thing though? You've received a number of awards. Is there any award that means something very special to you?
There's 2 when you say that, 2 come to mind.
Yeah.
One was the Lifetime Achievement from the Smithsonian and the Cooper Hewitt for design. And the Lifetime Achievement at that time, they don't give that award anymore, but that was important because that was a sort of a rare award that Massimo Vignelli got and Frank Gehry got. My buddies, Frank gave it to me that night, that my buddies got, some of them. And wow. It was a rarefied award and everybody was there. It was very, and that's about the top thing I can ever get in my life. So, because I have gotten the gold medal from AIGA and the AIA. The Science Museum Award was interesting because it was with Tim Berners-Lee, and the 3 of us got the 50th anniversary award. Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet, and Mayor Bloomberg and myself from a science museum. The second one, really, it was getting an honorary doctorate and giving the keynote or the commencement speech at a university called Babson, which is a university that it costs more than Harvard to go to, and it's not a university, it's a college because it's not a full university. They just give masters and doctorates, the same as this, in innovation. That was nice to be thought of outside of what everybody thinks my expertise is, which is running conferences or design or graphic design or architecture, that kind of stuff. I like being honored for people to understand that I understand things and I see patterns, not subjects. If you float and you're old, you get awards. By the way, I will tell you, because I only have a few minutes, I won't tell you this now, but if you ever want to hear it, I did a conference that was magnitudes better than TED. And I did one of them, I did it so well. And it was called Intellectual Jazz.
Yeah.
And I did that conference, and that was the best conference I ever did.
That was the mystery conference when you invited people and that you were put.
I didn't really announce it.
No.
And the speakers weren't told who was going to be there and not to prepare. And it was held in a place they would never go. And they had to be bused every day from the hotel 13 miles. It was everything against it. And it was by far the best conference and the best presenters I ever had.
Well, that says a lot about how you can orchestrate an interaction.
I know how to do that. I know how to do that too.
Yeah. Well, Richard, it's been an honor to have you on the show.
Well, you can give out my email address because I love to hear from people.
Yeah. Oh, I would be happy to.
So if you want, I'll give it to you. If you leave it, you can cut it out and put it on the screen. You can do whatever you want. RSW.
Yeah.
My initials at Wurman, WURMAN.com. Easy.
Yeah.
But the book you should get of mine, you haven't seen the book called Understanding.
No, we talked about that last week.
Get a used copy. Try to find a used copy online. But I think you might like it.
Oh, I think I would love it.
It's quite different than any other book I've done.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much, Richard, for doing this.
Okay. Nice talking to you again after so many years.
Yes, thank you.
This is Art Insiders New York, and my name is Anders Holst. If you enjoyed this episode and have family and friends who love New York and are passionate about the world of art, design, and architecture in the city, please spread the word by following us on artinsidersnewyork.com or liking us on our Facebook page, Art Insiders New York, where we publish newsworthy material all the time. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. This episode was produced by UOM LLC, copyright 2021.
So this podcast is about New York. I asked Paul Goldberger and I asked Richard Datner and I asked Richard Southwick, what do you think of Hudson Yards? And they have all given me various reviews. What do you think Hudson Yards really symbolizes in our world?
I think it's a low point in major developments. The aspiration was to do a signature group of buildings put together by a corporation that is dominated by a very wealthy man who lives in Florida and he lives in New York. Ross, I think his name is. And they hired architects to do these beautifully crafted buildings, tall buildings, each one showing off the best that they knew how, because I think there was large budgets, of how to design a penis. These buildings, the human body, we are designed that we look up just a few degrees, down a whole lot. Now, that's so we don't trip. If you couldn't see the ground like a foot ahead of your foot, you would fall over every stair. You'd be walking like this all the time, your head down. So we're designed not to look up. In fact, it hurts my neck, but I'm old. We're not designed to look there, and yet most of the energy was put on the tops of these things, make them individualized. Now, when I go to New York, which I used to go frequently. I lived in New York for 8 years, and I used to go frequently when I lived in Newport, Rhode Island, and more frequently when I lived in Philadelphia. And it's still the place to go to get things done. There's no doubt about it. But I'll ask you a question, just a simple question. When's the last time you took a long walk down Park Avenue?
Very rarely.
Now, isn't that interesting? It's the most beautiful street. It has a park in the middle. It's wide. It has trees. They have sculpture they sometimes put down in the sculpture show. Nice buildings, the Seagram's building and the Lever House and all those things. It ends with a grand station at the end. Has everything going for it, and you never fucking walk down the street. Why is that? It's because it's not interesting. Madison Avenue is interesting. Lexington Avenue is interesting.
Yeah.
Even Fifth Avenue is more interesting. Lots more traffic in some ways. Well, but just think of getting off at the most famous building. You're a rich man. You come from out of town. You have a meeting at the Seagram's building. Your Maybach lets you off on Park Avenue. Your driver comes around and opens the door, and it's raining like hell. And you have to go 250 feet to get to the front door in the rain. How stupid can you build a building when it's an office building? In New York, do you know it rains more in New York than it rains in Seattle? There's more overcast days in Seattle, but Seattle is thought of as the rainy season. It actually rains more inches in New York than Seattle. I'm getting someplace. This is a story you asked me, and I know you said you were going to ask me this. When we go to Europe, you can go to a city like Bologna if you're going to eat in Italy, and a lot of people like to eat Italian food. I would say the two favorite foods of the world are Italian and Japanese. I could be wrong, but I would say my friends or the people I know and the people they know, if you limited them to two foods, national foods, they would say Japanese. They would, if you limited to Japanese and Italian, North and South, the various even cuisines of those countries, they could live the rest of their life pretty happily. I don't have to have Jewish food for the rest of my life or French food ever again. Bologna is known as the best food in Italy, as Lyon is known as the best food in France. Correct. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, Bologna, it has 33 miles of covered walkways, arcades. Every building on the second floor comes to the street. So there's an arcade, you're out of the sun and you're out of the rain. It's the most pleasant city to walk around the world. You go to Venice and you go around, what is the most famous man-made space in the world? It's Piazza San Marco. It's nothing. The buildings on either side aren't even the same height. We don't know what's on the top. Tell me, what's on the top of those buildings? How do they end on the side? One is higher than the other. You don't know anything. You don't know the architects of any of the three buildings. You know the church is at the end. Yeah. But the three other sides, the most of it, you have no idea who the architect is, or you have no idea how the top ends, right?
Yeah. Do
they have balconies? What's the facades like? I don't know. It's just sort of there, right? Yeah. But you know Piazza San Marco, right? And you know it has an arcade. And when it rains, you can walk down the arcades, don't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, now let's move the clock forward. You're Swedish, so that you might not identify with this, but when I, as American, want to go to Europe, I like to walk. The great interest in going to Venice or going to the little towns in Italy, the small Cotswolds in England, going to small towns along the fjords in Norway, the towns where you can walk. The gift, when we want to have a vacation, we want to walk. We don't want to have to take cabs or have to go on the subways or the underground or whatever, or the tube or whatever you call it. Yeah. And we don't want to be lost. And what we'd like to do is walk around, window shop, go into a museum. That's the nature of humanity everywhere. Yeah. If you go to Jerusalem, you can't drive anyway. There's no cars there. there's a number of cars that are, Florence, the whole core of the city, you don't have a car. People like to walk. Well, that's not a place you can walk, what they just built. Star architect to star architect building, and there's no shops in the ground floor. You have to go in the building to the shopping inside the buildings. It's not human. Yeah. It's a show-off group of 6 or 8 penises with some strange thing in the middle. What would you think if you put that in the middle of Piazza San Marco? What would you think if you put somebody on a statue of a horse in the middle of Piazza San Marco? Why don't they fucking get a lesson from the past? Kahn, one of his great buildings, is the Salk Institute. And it's a plaza in the middle. You can walk along the sides. You can walk across the plaza. The weather's better. And there's a little trickle of water down the middle that you can step over. But why would you put that terrible $40 million or $50 million staircase that you can jump off and kill yourself? Well, why would that be a decision that you would make if you had any sensitivity except showing off something? I can pay for it. I can do it. It's amusing. People won't forget it. That's everything I said is correct. It's all those things. So I really think I always go backwards to the dumbest things. I mean, even Trump Tower, aptly named Trump Tower, is a building you have to go in. All the rest of the good things in New York, you walk past and go into a store and go into a store at night. There you have to go into its shopping center at high rents. The Trump Tower comes out of the same mentality. There he made it gold to look expensive. It's not built well. It's not a well-built building. It'll crumble. These new ones are very well built by very good architects, good in any form. Richard Kahn is very good, and they're all the SOM guy who used to run SOM did one. They're all very well done. I was in Newport, and somebody who is the president of not the owner, but the president of the developer, called me, and somebody said we should talk to you about what we're doing. No, it's already done. I mean, it was halfway up. They should talk to me. So we're going to send a helicopter to New York City, bring you down to New York City, park right next to the building, and we're having all the architects. So all the star architects came in for me to look at it and tell them what I thought. So I told them this. They didn't like me because they couldn't change it. And then the owner, who has the staircase, he says, "I'll show you. Many people, nobody's seen this before." And he opens up a cabinet, takes out a model of the staircase. No photographs, but we're going to put this in the middle. I fucking didn't know what to say. I asked for a large fee to take a day out of my life because I didn't really want to do it. So I asked for something unreasonable. They were very unhappy writing the check. But I said, there's some time, for instance, you can't take the school system that we have now, take it and make it better and think you've solved the problem. Learning is not a better version of what we have. I don't know if you can understand. People think they can always make something better. What you have is a better version of what doesn't work. It still doesn't work.
You have to reinvent.
I mean, let's say